it not only impacts the Palestinians, which I know you couldn't care less about, but it also obviously is going to impact the hostages. They're going to starve to death as well.
You're saying Israel is starving the hostages?
I'm saying, yes, yeah. When you block humanitarian aid for 3 months, where do you think they're going to get the food from?
Max, Israel...
What a joke.
What's up, y'all? No matter what you think about anybody, you have to give credit where credit is due. And in this case, Anna Kasparian does not play around when it comes to Scott Jennings and his shenanigans. While on the Abby Phillips show on CNN, he tries to play games around these topics and just spew out talking points, but Anna shuts him down completely. Let's watch these clips and I'll give my thoughts on it afterwards.
Tonight, outrage grows as Israel's actions push it to the brink of isolation. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis took to the streets today, demanding a hostage deal and a ceasefire with Gaza in a nationwide show of force. Now, the protests come after back-to-back Israeli strikes on Gaza's largest remaining hospital that killed at least 20 people on Monday. Among them, 5 Palestinian journalists who worked for various outlets, including the Associated Press and Reuters. Now, the Israeli military claimed, without providing evidence, that the double-tap strike, as it's called, was aimed at what it believed was a camera positioned by Hamas to observe IDF activity. A security source told CNN that none of the journalists killed on Monday were targets. Meanwhile, the Palestinian people's suffering is deepening. Famine is declared for the first time in Gaza. Joining us in our fifth seat at the table is Max Boot. He's a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations and a Washington Post columnist. And Max, this is just a continuation of almost a snowball effect, as the war has been being carried out, I think, like this for some time now. But the combination of the targeting of journalists and also the backlash inside Israel and outside of Israel is starting to worry a lot of people who are pro-Israel, by the way.
Yeah, including me. I mean, I'm a strong supporter of Israel, but I'm very concerned about what I'm seeing that the Netanyahu government is doing in Gaza, because if you listen to what the IDF, the Israeli generals themselves, said about a year ago, was they had concluded their military objectives in Gaza. Hamas was no longer a threat to Israel, and so they were basically saying there was not much more that the Israeli military could do in Gaza, and yet the offensive continues, because for Netanyahu to turn off the war would be very politically perilous, because he is really at the mercy of the far-right parties in his own coalition. And so he keeps on fighting, even though the cost is growing, not just to Palestinians, but also to Israelis, because remember, there are a lot of Israeli soldiers who are on the front lines as well. So to my mind, this is a terrible tragedy, not only primarily, of course, humanitarian tragedy for the people of Gaza, but it's really a long-term tragedy for the state of Israel. I was just looking at a poll that showed, Gallup showed, that only 30% of Americans now support the war that Israel is waging in Gaza. This is going to cause an entire generation of Americans in countries around the world to turn against the Jewish state. And as somebody, again, who supports the Jewish state and stands with the Israelis who are out there protesting against the war, what Netanyahu is doing is horribly destructive, not only for Gaza, but also for Israel.
I would agree with that. And, you know, I don't believe for a second that those journalists were not targeted. I think journalists are being targeted in Gaza. They're not allowing international journalists to report on the ground, to enter the Gaza Strip, unless, of course, they're being accompanied by IDF soldiers. And hundreds of journalists have been slaughtered in Gaza. Every single time it happens, Netanyahu comes out and says, oh, it was a mishap. And the United States just forgets about it and moves on, continues providing more bombs. Thank you for saying what you're saying, because you are correct that people are losing their support for Israel over the conduct of, I don't consider this a war at all. I do consider it a genocide. When you have humanitarian aid workers being slaughtered, when you have every single hospital bombed, when you have the entire Gaza Strip leveled, that's not a war. A war, if you do targeted strikes and you go after the combatants. 729 magazine, an Israeli publication, obtained IDF documents showing, their data shows that 83% of the people slaughtered in Gaza are civilians, 83%. Let me say it again, 83%. How are you going to call that a war against Hamas?
This latest attack.
It's like Scott Jennings wants to be a member of The Office, trying to break the fourth wall while they're talking about the most horrific thing happening in our lifetime. If he wasn't always on the wrong side of these debates, he would be hilarious. And for the other guy, he works for the Washington Post that's owned by Jeff Bezos. And he's not a journalist, he's a columnist. And even when he talks about supporting the people that are outraged and are on the streets, his focus and his perspective is that of the PR for Israel. It's not about the fact that they're committing this terrible tragedy every single day. It's just about the PR for the future. That's all he's worried about. Anna's the only one taking this any type of seriously.
That killed the 5 journalists. The story is that there was a camera that was operated by Hamas. I'm going to play what Barak Ravid, who's perhaps one of the best sourced reporters in both the United States and Israel on this story. This is what he said last night about that story.
At least from what I hear from some Israeli officials, there are serious questions about this version. And it is not at all clear that this was indeed an approved target. Whether it was a Hamas reconnaissance outpost in the hospital or not, there's been a lot of arguments between the general staff in the IDF headquarters and the Southern Command regarding targeting.
So Israeli officials said that the journalists were not the targets, but they were in fact killed. They also said that there were terrorists who were in the group of 20 that were killed. Mm-hmm. But this is the type of thing that has caused the world to ask very serious questions about how they are conducting this war. That they would, if you take this story at face value, bomb a camera, kill 20 people as collateral, and then say, as Netanyahu said in a statement today, that this was a tragic mishap.
Yeah, I think they said also 6 terrorists were killed in the attack.
Total BS.
We've heard, how do you know?
I know it's BS because of the IDF's internal documents, which indicate that 83% of people killed there happen to be civilians.
That there weren't any terrorists?
I'm not going to sit here and regurgitate the lies from the Israeli government as they're conducting a genocide.
So we've had
Anna, even if there were 6 terrorists killed in the strike, there were 20 people killed total. So there were a lot of people who were killed who, according to Israel, were not terrorists. 5 of those people were journalists. That's what I'm talking about. I can't litigate the terrorists or not, but even based on their version of it, that is what I think is causing a lot of concern.
Sure, look, it's a war. Tragic things happen. People that you hope would not be killed get killed, and in an active war zone. It happens in every active war zone for all of human history. I would note we've had 4 people talk and tell me, and not a single person has said the word hostage yet. There's still 50 hostages.
Right. Well,
Israel doesn't care
about the hostages. Let's not lie about that.
Just to be clear, I said hostages because I was talking about the hundreds of Israelis who were in the streets today demanding a hostage deal
I know.
And demanding that this war end immediately.
And the deal has to be executed by the people who took the hostages, Hamas. They're the ones holding them.
They're
the ones who have been holding them since October the 7th. Mm-hmm. They keep, talking about possible increment. Why don't they just release? Can you ask one simple question?
They want to release the hostages.
All of them?
Yes.
How many?
They accepted a ceasefire.
Lying. They said maybe 10.
Give us a 60-day pause in this war. We will return every single hostage. Israel stands in the way every single
There's no answer to this. Why are they holding the hostages?
What is your view about this? Because this is a talking point that comes up a lot.
It's not a talking point. There are 50 lives down there.
Hold on a second,
It is definitely a talking point. When you block humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip for 3 months straight, it not only impacts the Palestinians, which I know you couldn't care less about, but it also obviously is going to impact the hostages. They're going to starve to death as well.
You're saying Israel is starving the hostages?
I'm saying, yes, yeah. When you block humanitarian aid for 3 months, where do you think they're going to get the food from?
Max, Israel
what a joke.
And Hamas have been circling around a lot of different...
See, all that shenanigans and laughing through the propaganda and just spewing talking points after talking points usually works on this panel because nobody really calls it out. And when they do call it out, it's just them usually clutching their pearls and saying, oh my God, Scott, I can't believe you don't believe in this. No, Anna's not taking that approach. She's straight up calling him a liar and a clown, which is the best way to deal with people like Scott Jennings. He is not there to have an honest debate about anything. You know that he's lying, so you gotta call him out as soon as he says it. Don't even let him finish what he's saying. Don't waste anybody's time and just completely shut it down because he doesn't really have a point. He's just trying to derail the conversation. Good on Anna.
Hostage deals, ceasefire deals. They haven't happened for a number of different reasons. And with the caveat, as we have said numerous times, Hamas is a homicidal terrorist organization that should never have hostages in the first place. But what is stopping a deal from actually happening to get these last hostages out? Because many Israelis think that the Netanyahu government is not doing enough to take a deal and get them out.
You know, I think that is ultimately the stumbling block, not making any excuses for Hamas, which is this evil, genocidal terrorist organization, but they have indicated a willingness to do a deal to release some of the hostages. There was a deal that was done earlier in the year that released a bunch of hostages. Most Israelis want to do that deal because most Israelis are convinced the only way the 20 remaining hostages who are still alive are going to come home is with a deal. But Netanyahu insists on military action, which most Israelis see as endangering the lives of the hostages. And what Netanyahu is saying, he will keep on fighting until Hamas ceases to exist. Well, Hamas is not going to give up. And so basically, that is consigning Israeli troops to perpetual war in Gaza with no end game in sight. And Netanyahu refuses to make a deal with Hamas. He refuses to allow the Palestinian Authority to come into Gaza to try to have some Palestinian governance, which is more responsible and law-abiding than what they've seen in recent years. So it's a disaster. There's plenty of blame to go around on both sides. But right now, I think there's a general sense in Israel that Netanyahu simply does not want to do the deal.
You said end game. What is the Hamas end game? What is their stated goal?
Well, they want to stay. They want to remain as an organization.
No. What's their stated goal as it relates to the Jews in Israel?
They want to destroy the state of Israel. There's no question about it. But they're not in a position to do that anymore because the IDF has rendered them no longer a credible military
What's their stated goal as it
Israel.
relates to Jewish people?
They want to exterminate Jews. But so what, Scott?
I don't think that's
that doesn't justify what Israel is doing in Gaza.
I think the point that he's making.
You're acting like we're dealing with rational actors.
No,
we're not. There may not be a deal to be done with rational actors.
Can we talk about
I'm not acting like anything at all. But the question on the table for the entire globe is, what is it going to take to bring those hostages home and end the killing and the suffering of the Palestinian people? And at the end of the day, it has to be a deal between Hamas and the Israeli government. And Hamas is a horrible entity, but it has to be a deal.
But you're saying you're going to leave them in
there, and there will be a deal with them.
No, you're saying you're going to leave them in place.
The only way, Scott. The only way.
I'm saying what?
Are you saying that you said we have to have a deal with Hamas? You're anticipating that we leave them in place.
Scott, did I say anything of the sort?
Yes, you just said we have to have a deal with Hamas.
No. I did not say anything of the sort. In order to get the hostages out, go ask President Trump. He has been trying to broker a deal between Hamas and Israel. None of that is new. None of that is novel. None of that is even a literal statement.
It's just a fact. Why is Israel annexing the West Bank right now? Why is Israel annexing the West Bank? Which, of course, is not governed by Hamas at all. Why are Israeli settlers allowed to just run Palestinians out of their legal homes, build thousands of illegal settlements? West Bank has nothing to do with Hamas. Why is Israel annexing it? Why did Netanyahu say that his stated goal in an interview with I-24 News, an Israeli publication, say that he has a religious need to pursue the greater Israel
I'm going to let
project?
Scott answer quickly, and then we've got to go. Go ahead, Scott.
Go ahead, Scott.
My view is this. The hostages have been there for almost 700 days. There's a reason that Hamas has not released them. Are you going to answer
her question, though?
I don't know. I don't work for the Israeli government. All I really care about is that the hostages come home. And I have no belief that Hamas, that took the hostages, that murdered all these people, are ever going to let them go unless they're totally eradicated.
We do have
Except
to leave
they have
it there.
let them go during ceasefires.
Thank you very much for...
Abby's completely getting tired of him. Completely. She's almost done with him. But she needs someone, because it's CNN, to artificially push back. He doesn't really have any points. He's not answering any questions. He's just there to spew propaganda. And CNN believes that you have to have both sides of an issue, which in most cases is true. But in this case, he doesn't really serve a purpose besides propaganda. And CNN itself does it by themselves, calling Hamas an evil organization. Hamas are freedom fighters. And every time there are freedom fighters around the world, the US calls them terrorists. Every time. So why would this time be any different? And like Anna tried to point out, they don't exist in the West Bank. What's your excuse there? Scott doesn't have the talking points to defend that, so he's not even going to address it at all. It's just nonsense. But Anna did a great job. No matter what you disagree with Anna on, when it comes to this topic, she does a phenomenal job. She's on it 100%. She's needed on these type of panels. So let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. And if you want to see Morning Joe try to set a trap for a mayor and it completely backfire, click this video right here. And if you're still watching, you might as well subscribe to the channel. Peace.